A good Erev Shabbos. Well, we did it, and it was a group effort. Thanks to a number of sponsors who lined up to help us cover our share of chartering a bus, a small but intrepid number of KSTers woke up before dawn Monday and showed up at the promenade to catch our bus to Ottawa and rally for Israel, and rally to bring the hostages home, and rally against the anti-Semitism that seems, by most measures, to be on the rise everywhere. It was, as you might expect of Ottawa in December, a pretty cold day, though it certainly could have been colder. It was, as you might have expected, of a very dedicated Jewish community nationwide, a good turnout. In fact, the same proportion of the entire Jewish community of Canada represented there as turned up in Washington just a few weeks ago. We heard speeches from a number of politicians and community activists, none more moving than our own neighbor and frequent KST guest, Nate Leipziger, who's now 95, and among the most notable and vocal of Toronto's community, precious community of Holocaust survivors. We saw friends from all over greeting each other with excitement and hugs, despite the layers of cold weather gear we were all sporting. The Jewish people can only always use a little reunion. Of course, there were many clever signs, and of course, many young guys putting on tefillin, one of whom did so for the very first time in his life. So, a lot of good things came from Monday's effort, not the least of which was a great showing and a memorable day. And not to let the week go by without even more mitzvahs, a dedicated band of KSTers showed up Wednesday night at Temple Har Zion to sponsor and help serve dinner to dozens of Torontonians experiencing food insecurity and even homelessness, as in, yes, people sleeping on our streets at night because they don't have anywhere else to go. We used to participate in this program back in the pre-pandemic days, and we were glad to have the opportunity to lend a hand once again. I've learned that we've covered some, but not all of the costs of the dinner, which was not only served there on Wednesday night, but the remainders were taken that evening to a food pantry in Richmond Hill to be distributed that evening to those who would most appreciate it. So if anyone else wants to contribute, please send a note to the office or donate through the website. By the way, that Richmond Hill food pantry is one that we volunteered in one Chanukah night some years ago. So, speaking of Chanukah and spreading the light, this is where we are. Shabbos Chanukah is the joining together of two powerful lights. The light of Shabbat, which brings peace into our homes and some calm into our hearts and souls, and Chanukah, which lights up the darkest days of the year with the reminders of God's miracles done to sustain our people. Rabbi Twersky from Yeshiva University reminds us that Chanukah also has in it always Rosh Chodesh Teves, because of the dates on the Hebrew calendar when Chanukah begins. In fact, this Shabbat will be blessing the new month, which begins on Tuesday night. For those keeping track at home, the reappearance of the moon in Jerusalem, the eternal and undivided capital of Israel, will take place on Tuesday night at 8:01 p.m. and 3 parts. Die Moiled wird sein Dienstag bei Nacht, 1 Minute nach 8 Zeger mit 3 Chalokim. Rabbi Twersky asks, what is the central theme of Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of a new month on the Hebrew calendar? It's renewal, hitchadshut. The moon itself renews. It becomes invisible to us, and then it reappears. It waxes and wanes, as do the Jewish people. We know that the power of renewal will shine, even when the moon seems to have vanished from view. That's why we announce the reappearance with such fanfare and excitement. Chanukah, the holiday of rededication, celebrates that idea too, that we can begin anew, even given past sufferings. And in truth, Rabbi Twersky writes, hischadshus, renewal, is really a daily occurrence. We say in our prayers that God is mechadesh betuvay b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshis. In His goodness, He renews the work of creation every day. According to the Rashba, Rabbi Shlomo ibn Adret, who was the chief rabbi of Barcelona for 50 years in the 1200s, This is the reason we wash our hands and say the brachas anew every morning, because like the world, we are renewed every day. Then again, if every day mentions renewal, it's Chanukah that's dedicated to celebrating this idea. Rabbi Twersky explains some important results of this capacity to renew. First of all, the ability to renew allows us to live happily and successfully in the present moment. Everyone has made mistakes, or at very least not lived up to their fullest potential in the past. That past which we all carry could be a burden that overwhelms us and keeps us trapped in regret and depression and second-guessing ourselves. But hitchadshut, hischadshus, the capacity for renewal, allows us to reflect on the past just enough to learn from it, resolve to do better, and through teshuvah, resolve to do even better in the future. Another major benefit of the koach ha'ischadshus, the ability to renew, is to keep going in the face of adversity. The storm clouds have been gathering for some time now, and unfortunately we are in a moment where we're worried, praying for our brothers and sisters in Israel every day, those in uniform and those not in uniform, those whose whereabouts are known, and the 100+ hostages whose location and certainly their well-being are completely unknown to us. Thanks a lot, Red Cross, for all your help with that. While in Israel, the rockets and the threats at the borders are of a different order, here in Canada and in the US, the threats are daily and scary. The marches and calls to throw us all into the sea, the calls to wipe us all out, the shots fired at schools where our children learn, the firebomb at a shul's door in Montreal, which makes each and every shul wonder whether we're next. All this would sap our strength and our resolve, and certainly wear down our faith and trust in God, asking, why us? Why do we have to go through this? Why are we deserving of this? Our ability to renew ourselves keeps us hopeful and positive, even in challenging times like this. Our wisdom and inner strength help us maintain the clear and absolute knowledge that of all the great problems, sicknesses, curses of humankind that Jews as individuals and as a people have solved or worked or helped others to solve over the centuries, this one is not within our grasp to fix. Those who are afflicted with Jew hatred must recognize it, must examine themselves and the deeply rooted underlying causes of this baseless hatred, and resolve themselves never to let it take hold of them, in their own self-interest, even more than ours, because hatred always destroys the haters. One more life-sustaining power that Rabbi Twersky mentions is the capacity of chidush in learning, renewal in learning, innovation, which is why Torah study is such an important part of our lives here at KST and in the Jewish world overall, because this connection to Torah and the infinite capacity to learn new things, to find new ideas, new applications, new insights in the Torah God gives us is truly chayenu v'orech yameinu, our life and the length of our days. Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, writes in Koheles, which we read over Sukkot, in fact, on Shmini Atzeres, on the very day when the first awful news was reaching us of the atrocities in Israel. He writes, there is nothing new under the sun. Ein chadash tachat hashemesh. That certainly goes for the outside world. In every generation, they rise up to destroy us. Nothing new there, unfortunately. But it also suggests, he says, that if we separate ourselves from Torah and from Yiddishkeit, then there's truly nothing new. There's no chidush. Everything is just the same old, same old. We can't learn from anything. We can't change ourselves. We cannot change anything else. The only question will be, how long will this misery last? You see that even people who are successful seem to have everything they need or want, eventually get bored and start seeking thrills, because even success becomes boring. But for us who are connected to Torah, to God who transcends time, we can find renewal in the story of Pesach. We can find renewal in lighting a menorah and spinning a dreidel and eating latkes. renewal in finding new meaning and insight and inspiration in the very same words of a Torah portion we read a year ago and the year before that. Renewal in doing the same deeds of tzedakah and chesed that we did in the past, but we recognize that the moment is new, the opportunity is new, and even we ourselves are not the people we were a year or 2 or 5 ago, sometimes not even a week or 2 ago. Chanukah comes right in the darkest of the darkness to say, light a candle. Light a candle and chase away the darkness. Light a candle and share the light with others, and then we ourselves in turn have more light. The story of Joseph, Yosef HaTzadik, in our portion this week of Vayeishev, usually connected to or very close to Chanukah. Even in a dark place, in a prison, where there would have seemed to be no hope, Yosef kept his sense of self and his sense of who he was and what he was capable of doing. He took seriously the concerns of 2 fellow prisoners who were not Jews, but were his fellow human beings, and at the moment were his fellow prisoners, and listened carefully to the words of the baker and the wine steward and their dreams, and tried to help them make meaning out of their inner turmoil. In fact, Yosef's whole existence was the story of how to operate, how to renew, how to thrive, even when you're not in your comfort zone, when you're out of your element, when you're in exile. Yosef met a series of challenges that no one in his family had ever encountered before, and did not lose hope or faith or trust or his center of gravity. In fact, he seemed to grow stronger from each experience. He remained true to himself even while functioning and succeeding in a less than friendly environment. He kept the vision and the Torah of his family at the center of his thoughts, as several different midrashim explain. He even recalled the last word of Torah that he and his father Yaakov were studying when they parted many years before. It's a strong inspiration to us, who could not be blamed if our faith, our trust, our confidence wavers a little bit in these very troubled times. Yet, we remain true to ourselves, we stay connected to the truth, we weather the storms. And in the spirit of Chanukah, we recognize and we live the Mahadran min ha-Mahadran opinion in the Talmud of how to light the menorah, that the lights that were sufficient for yesterday are no longer enough for today. Today, we must bring even more light than yesterday. Kindle an extra candle, do even more. As the darkness seems to be on the increase, our efforts to shine light also increases, and we know that ultimately the power of renewal will triumph, as the moon always vanishes and then reappears. As the same Koheles, the same Ecclesiastes says, that wisdom excels folly as the light excels darkness. V'ra'isi ani sheyesh yisrain ha'chachma min ha'sichlus, ke yisron ha'or min ha'chayshech. And you could understand that in even a deeper way, that the greatest wisdom comes from the light, specifically that comes min ha'choshech, the light that emerges out of the darkness. May it continue to illumine our eyes and our world. Shabbat Shalom, Chodesh Tov, Chag Urim Sameach, a Freilichen Chanukah.